Hey everyone, welcome back to the Language Lounge. Today we're diving into a topic that's close to my heart, learning English as a second language. And I have my friend Ben here to chat with me. Ben, welcome.
Thanks, Emma. So happy to be here. Learning English has been a big journey for me, so I'm excited to share my experiences.
Awesome. So, just to start, how long have you been learning English?
Well, I'd say it's been a lifelong journey. I started in school back in Germany when I was around 10, but it didn't really feel like learning until I moved to the UK a few years ago.
Moving really accelerates things, doesn't it? Living where the language is spoken definitely immerses you. How was that adjustment for you?
Oh, it was huge. At first I thought I knew enough to handle it. But then I got here, and people spoke so fast, with accents and slang I'd never encountered. It was like English, but a different English.
I can imagine, especially in the UK, where every region has a distinct accent and some pretty unique slang. I think people overlook that, don't they? The idea that learning a language doesn't always mean you'll understand everyone right away.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the first big lessons I learned. The English you learn in school doesn't always match the English people speak in real life. Like, the first time someone said cheers to me, I was completely lost. I thought they were making a toast or something.
Oh, that's so true. Cheers is such a British thing. It can mean thanks or bye. But in other contexts, it's just so confusing. What other phrases tripped you up?
Fancy a cuppa? I kept hearing that and wondered why people were suddenly asking about cups. I mean, of course, it means do you want tea? But if you don't know, it sounds so strange.
Totally. Language quirks are wild, especially in a place where tea is almost sacred. It sounds like you were picking up on the cultural side of English too, though.
Yes, and that's a huge part of language learning, isn't it? The culture behind it. Once I understood that the British have these little rituals around tea, I realized that fancy a cuppa wasn't about the drink. It was more about connecting, sharing a moment. It was like cracking a code.
Exactly. Language and culture are so intertwined. So, would you say that's one of your biggest tips for language learners? To explore the culture, not just the words?
Absolutely. It's key. I mean, learning grammar and vocabulary is essential, of course, but understanding why people use the words they do gives you a whole new level of insight. It makes conversations feel real, not just like you're translating in your head.
Yes, that's such a good point. So, you mentioned earlier that moving really brought your English to life. Was there a moment where you realized, wow, I'm actually communicating without overthinking?
Yes, actually, I think it was during a work meeting. Everyone was sharing ideas, and suddenly I found myself jumping in and speaking up without rehearsing every word in my head. It just flowed. I remember leaving that meeting thinking, hey, I didn't even panic.
That's a huge milestone, honestly. For so many people, including myself when I learned French, that flow moment feels like magic. But it's really just the result of hours and hours of practice. Would you agree?
Definitely. Practice is everything. I used to feel frustrated because I wanted it to happen overnight, you know? but it takes time. Lots of reading, listening, speaking, even if it feels awkward at first.
Yeah, the awkward phase is real. But I always say, embrace the awkward. Everyone goes through it. Do you have any specific techniques you found helpful during that phase?
Well, I'd say shadowing helped a lot. I'd listen to a podcast or watch a video in English, then repeat exactly what I heard, mimicking the tone and rhythm. It felt silly at first, but it trained my brain to match the natural flow of English.
Shadowing is so underrated. I feel like not enough people talk about it. It really does work wonders for pronunciation and confidence. So, are there any podcasts or shows you'd recommend for English learners?
Oh, loads! For beginners, I'd suggest something like The English We Speak by the BBC. It's short and focuses on everyday phrases. For intermediate learners, ESL Pod is great. And if you're advanced, TED Talks are amazing because they cover a huge range of topics.
Great suggestions. I love that each of those has something unique to offer. And what about movies or TV shows? Anything that stood out to you?
Actually, watching sitcoms like Friends and The Office was fantastic for me. The humor in everyday situations are great for learning casual speech. Plus, I learned a lot about American culture from Friends and British humor from The Office.
Oh, sitcoms are perfect because they have natural conversations. I love how they cover common situations and slang. So, what's been the most rewarding part of learning English for you?
Honestly, I think it's been the ability to connect with people from different cultures. English is so widely spoken, and now I feel like I can make friends almost anywhere. It's really opened up my world.
That's wonderful. It's amazing to see how language can be a bridge like that. So, looking back, is there anything you'd do differently in your learning journey?
I think I'd focus less on being perfect. I wasted a lot of time trying to sound correct instead of just jumping in and communicating. I realized later that people don't really care if you make mistakes. They care about what you're saying.
Absolutely. The fear of making mistakes holds so many people back. But in the end, most people are just happy you're trying to speak their language. Do you have any advice for listeners who are afraid of making mistakes?
Yes, definitely. I'd say, think of mistakes as stepping stones. Every time you mess up, you're actually learning. And the funny thing is, people often remember your courage more than your mistakes. So just go for it.
Great advice. I always say mistakes are proof you're learning. And language is really about human connection, not perfection. So, do you have any plans to learn another language, or are you sticking with English for now?
Oh, I'd love to learn Spanish next. I've heard it's a beautiful language. And since so many countries speak it, it would open up even more opportunities.
That's fantastic. Spanish is such a rich language, and it does give you access to so many amazing cultures. Do you think learning English has given you the confidence to tackle Spanish?
Yes, 100%. Learning English taught me how to learn a language, if that makes sense. I feel like I know what works for me now, so I'm not starting from zero.
I love that. Once you learn one language, it really does get easier to learn another. All right, as we wrap up, any final thoughts or advice for language learners tuning in?
Just remember that everyone's journey is different. Don't compare yourself to others and don't rush. Keep practicing, enjoy the process, and don't forget to celebrate small wins along the way.
Such great advice, Ben. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story. It's always inspiring to hear from people who've been through the journey and come out stronger. So, thank you.
Thank you, Emma. It was a pleasure.
All right, everyone. That's it for today's episode of the Language Lounge. Remember to embrace your language learning journey and enjoy the process. Until next time, cheers!